Asset flip games are something of a special breed. Many people call them shameless cash grabs, shovelware, and the like, but some of them are wacky, dumb, and fun in a different kind of way than you'd expect from a AA or AAA game. I still remember when Hentai vs. Evil came to the Switch. The title alone was bonkers, as was the whole anime girls shooting zombies, ogres, and grim reapers. It wasn't what I'd call a great game, maybe not even a good game, but it was dumb and wacky fun. Another game of that same series is released on the Switch as well as PlayStation, much better optimized and with better just everything. So let's dive in. Something I streamed the full game of last week. Here is my review of Anime vs. Evil Apocalypse for the Nintendo Switch. With story, you play as Mia. After evil forces turn most of the population into polygonal zombies, a reference to the game's graphical engine, Mia and Rebecca explore the world looking for survivors to recruit as friends. When they happen upon a city, they see a plane crash, venturing into the monster-infested land to try to find survivors. Now, as a story for this sort of game, I think this is fine. There really isn't much story to it outside of each girl being happy you rescued her, and the end of the game is admittedly not that climactic. But for what it is, it's alright. Though we should talk about the voice acting. Oh, by the way, this game has voice acting. Some of the scenes are okay, but much of the voice work is very stuttery and awkward, and one scene really stuck out to me, where there's a typo of a character saying who you are instead of who are you. And stranger still is the fact that the voice acting says the typo aloud word for word, as if the script saying who you are is intentional. When it comes to gameplay, this is a third-person shooter with missions and task elements thrown in. As you play each stage, you'll be gunning down zombies and other monsters, trying to complete little missions and get to the next caged up girl, aiming to rescue her and gain her as a new friend. Now with the Switch version, this is touted as Enhanced Edition. Basically, the devs ported the game to Unreal Engine 5 for its console release, making it look a bit different from its initial PC version. But outside of that, it's just the base game from PC. And for those that are wondering, no, this is not Hentai Edition that gave you nudity options for character renders and sexual cutscenes added in 2 extra stages via DLC. Hentai vs. Evil did give us the uncensored mode on Switch, but not this time around. What you do in this game is play around on the 4 stages. You can play the game in story mode, survival mode, or free mode. The story has you completing missions to rescue girls, while survival mode is a typical zombie game that has waves of enemies thrown at you while you fend them off as long as you can. There are also various difficulty levels you can go between. Once you get into a stage, it starts to show just how much more they've done with this formula since the original game. You're placed on a stage, get a little story scene to set things up, and you're let loose. All over the map are little missions you can do to gain money, shops for you to spend that money on ammo, medkits, and unlocking new weapons, and special gates that you need codes to unlock and get to the girl you have to rescue to end the stage. There are enemies roaming the map that you need to take out, a lot of which were brought straight from Hentai vs. Evil. The zombies and Grim Reapers look similar, and the boar enemies here bear a striking resemblance to the ogres from that original game. They'll wander around and move towards you when they see you. They also respawn fairly often, so there's always an unlimited supply of opponents to fight and potentially get money from. Your goal here is to get the gate key code and access the girl you need to rescue. You do this with missions that are laid around the map. While some of these missions are labeled white in color as little optional things you can do for getting money and weapons, there are always 4 red colored missions for you to take on, granting you a part of the key code when you succeed. These options are pretty simple as there are only 2 types of missions. You either need to take down a certain number of enemies on a time limit or gather floating kids' toys around an area also under a time limit. They're pretty easy to do, though I will admit that many of the missions don't actively spawn enemies around you for that mission. So it's advised you not take out any enemies in the area as you approach the mission marker, only fighting them once you get the missions so they count towards your total. Once you finish the required missions, you can input the key code on the gate to unlock the end of the stage where you fight a dragon and rescue a girl, but not before doing a little bit of weird math equations to find out the door code to rescue said girl. But once you do that, you recruit her into your roster and end the stage. But let's get back to fighting enemies, which I find to be a lot of fun. There are lots of weapons you can unlock either by finding or buying them, from assault rifles and shotguns to a chainsaw and a fire axe. The gunplay is also vastly improved over the original game. Whenever you aim and start firing on an enemy, a new aim assist feature locks onto them as you keep shooting, which makes taking them down rather simple. The money system is also extremely convenient. Whenever you buy a weapon in the shop, it doesn't only count for that stage or even that game mode. Buying the dual pistols or katana makes them instantly obtainable from any shop you find in future story levels. Even survival mode lets you just waltz up to a shop and grab that grenade launcher you unlocked earlier to decimate the early waves with ease. Though the game can get repetitive, the main missions for all the story levels are always defeating X number of enemies in X minutes. The toy hunting missions I've only ever seen in the optional white missions. But considering there are only 4 stages in the game anyways, and only 3 of those stages are part of the actual story, you're probably not going to feel the repetition before you end the story campaign. Though it might be a little bit weird when you first look at the character roster, seeing 8 characters and only 4 of them are unlocked in the main story. That's because of how they've structured the post-game 4th stage. This doesn't have any gates to open or bosses to fight. It is there for you to just explore and unlock the rest of the roster, which consists of the 3 playable characters from Hentai vs. Evil, the first game, along with Hara, a succubus character that looks strangely similar to the main character from Satricat's game Succubus with Guns, which is also on Switch. The only real difference between their models being their eyes and colors on the attire. And all these characters can be customized just as they could in Hentai vs. Evil. You can swap their outfits, hair, and change the sizes of their breasts, thighs, and the scale of the character themselves. Now I say scale instead of height because if you look at the model, they keep the same proportions when you move the slider up or down. It's more or less just increasing the size of the model rather than just increasing certain body parts to make her taller. And this is a personal thing, but I was kind of disappointed with the Hara character. Hara the Succubus is the poster girl on this game's artwork and loading screens, yet she isn't involved in the story at all. She's just there as an unlockable character once you beat the game. I was thinking that Hara was gonna show up as the final boss of the story mode saying, hey, I'm a succubus and I'm the leader of all the evil forces that turn the humans into zombies, having the 4 girls having to team up against her. But no such luck. Maybe in a future game, as we do know that they are working on a new game in this series. Speaking of beating the game, this isn't that long of an adventure. I spent a fair amount of exploration in each stage, not really going after the main task, and each one took me around 35 to 40 minutes to clear a piece. So it should take you about 2 to 3 hours to complete the game's story levels, and you can spend a bit more playing around with survival mode and unlocking the rest of the game's roster. But it's not a very long adventure, especially not for the price of $25, which is about $5 more than you would pay on Steam. Next, let's dive into controls for just a second. It's worth noting that one of the menus is a bit clunky to navigate. The game detects your inputs and lets you move around the menu with the D-pad, though it's a little more difficult when modifying your characters. Whenever you go to change the color of a girl's hair or clothes, you can't seem to access the big color circle, only able to use the little sliders. That's because it was designed to be used with the touchscreen. I went into handheld mode and tapped on the circle, easily changing colors to what I wanted. It's just awkward with button controls. Next up is presentation. I think the game looks good for what it is. Things look smooth and the models look decent in this cartoony style. Well, as long as you don't zoom in on their faces in photo mode. You'll never see this in gameplay, but sometimes the face textures aren't always the best when looked at closely. And with performance, this game's great. The game is a very stable 30 FPS pretty much from start to finish. I found one instance where I got some very small frame drops for a split second in the farm stage, but everything else has been basically perfect. And that brings us to battery life. Anime vs. Evil gives the original and light models a battery range of about 2 to 3 hours, while the V2 and OLED models get 5.5 to 6.5 hours. In conclusion, Anime vs. Evil brings more of what the original game started and offers a much more polished version of the concept with little bits of story, more characters, and better mechanics. Now, on the downside, the dress-up controls are a bit on the clunky side. There's only a couple hours worth of content here for a $25 price tag, and the poster girl Succubus has a surprisingly small, if not non-existent role in the game outside of just being an unlockable character. It's definitely not shooter of the year, and I wasn't too thrilled with how the game ended, but it's a neat little time waster and a vast improvement over its predecessors. Reviews to go rates Anime vs. Evil Apocalypse for the Nintendo Switch a 7.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.